Title: Chains of Deception. David and Maria had built a modest yet fulfilling life in Durban, South Africa. Their 12-year-old daughter Angela was the heart of their home, a bright and loving girl who saw her parents as inseparable. Their love story was one that inspired many two souls who had chosen each other despite life's hardships. David was a skilled engineer, known for his diligence and honesty. Though his job provided enough for their needs, Maria had always wished for more luxury, more status, more ease. She loved David, but she also loved the idea of a glamorous life. One fateful evening, David came home with an electrifying opportunity. He had been offered a prestigious job in the United States, a position that would triple his income and elevate their lives to a level they had never imagined. It was a dream come true. We could have everything we've ever wanted, Maria. A big house, financial security, the best education for Angela, David said, excitement radiating from his eyes. But Maria's face darkened. Her grip tightened around the glass of wine she held. "Everything we want, and what about us? What about me?" she asked, her voice trembling. David frowned. "What do you mean?" Maria sighed and sat down, her expression shifting into something deeply vulnerable. "I don't want to lose you to another world, David. You'll go there, you'll meet new people, experience a different life. What if you realize you don't need me anymore? What if you decide not to come back?" David knelt beside her, taking her hands in his. "Maria, my love, that would never happen. I am doing this for us." Tears welled in Maria's eyes. "What we have is enough, David. We have a home, a family. Why risk everything just for money?" Her words struck a deep chord in him. He had always believed in contentment, in family above all else. He could see the fear in Maria's eyes, the fear of distance, of change, of being left behind. And so, against his own ambition, he made a decision. He declined the offer. At first, Maria seemed overjoyed. She clung to him that night as though she had saved their marriage from an invisible storm. They continued their simple life in Durban, with David working tirelessly and Maria maintaining their home. But as time passed, something changed. Maria, who once convinced him that love and family were enough, began to show signs of restlessness. She would complain about their old car, their small home, the lack of exotic vacations. "If only you had taken that job," she would mumble under her breath, almost as if taunting him for the sacrifice he had made for her. The most painful part was how their intimacy began to fade. She no longer greeted him with the same warmth when he returned from work. The laughter at dinner became less frequent. The woman who once held his hands tightly now kept her distance, lost in her thoughts. And then, strange things started happening. Maria suddenly had expensive dresses, shoes from luxury brands, and perfumes David knew he had not bought for her. At first, he convinced himself she had been saving money. But when their finances became tight, and she still appeared adorned with new jewelry, doubt began to gnaw at him. One evening, after dinner, he finally asked, "Maria, where are you getting all these things?" Maria's eyes flickered with something unreadable before she scoffed. "Why are you questioning me like I'm a child? Maybe I saved up. Maybe I have friends who buy me gifts. Or maybe you're just looking for a reason to argue." David sighed, feeling the chasm between them widen. The woman he had sacrificed everything for was slipping away from him, and he had no idea how to bring her back. Little did he know, the real betrayal was yet to come. The first time David noticed something strange. It was a subtle change. Maria had begun dressing differently. The modest woman he had married now adorned herself in designer dresses, luxurious handbags, and high-end jewelry. At first, he assumed she had been saving money or had received them as gifts from friends. But as the months passed, her lifestyle became more extravagant. Expensive perfumes lined their bedroom shelf. She now visited high-end salons in Johannesburg, disappearing for entire weekends. Yet, David's bank account remained the same, struggling to keep up with their everyday expenses. One evening, as Maria returned home, draped in an elegant silk dress and carrying a Louis Vuitton bag, David couldn't hold back any longer. "Where are you getting all these things, Maria?" he asked, his voice calm but laced with unease. Maria barely spared him a glance as she set her bag down. "Why do you ask?" she said nonchalantly. "Because we can't afford them," David stated firmly. "Maria, I work hard, and you know things have been tight. And yet, you dress like someone married to a billionaire." Maria sighed dramatically, removing her earrings as she walked toward the bedroom. "David, must you question everything? Can't I have nice things? Is it a crime to treat myself? With what money, Maria?" His voice was sharp now, frustration creeping in. Maria turned to him, her expression shifting. There was something cold in her eyes, something David had never seen before. "Maybe if you had taken that job in America, we wouldn't be having this conversation," she muttered. David's heart clenched. "So now it's my fault." She rolled her eyes. "You always act like a saint, like you're the only one suffering. You're not the only one allowed to have ambition, David." The conversation ended abruptly, but David couldn't shake the unsettling feeling in his gut. He began watching her closely. She was going out more often, returning home late, sometimes smelling of cologne that wasn't his. When he asked where she had been, her answers were vague. One evening, he followed her. He stayed a few cars behind as she drove into the city. His hands clenched the steering wheel when he saw her pull into the driveway of an upscale hotel. She stepped out of the car, checked her reflection in the window, and walked inside with confidence. David's pulse pounded in his ears. He wanted to storm in, demand answers, but what proof did he really have? Was she meeting a friend, a business associate, or was it something worse? He sat there for nearly an hour, but Maria never came out. Eventually, he drove home, his mind racing. That night, he confronted her. "I followed you," he admitted, watching for her reaction. "I saw you at that hotel. Who were you meeting?" Maria paused, her expression unreadable. Then she scoffed. "Are you spying on me now, David? Have you become that husband? Answer the question." His voice was sharp, raw with pain. Maria crossed her arms. "I had a meeting with some friends. Women's business. Nothing that concerns you." "I don't believe you," David said coldly. Maria laughed humorlessly. "Then don't." The air between them crackled with unspoken words. Years of trust unraveling in mere seconds. Then she said something that chilled him to his core. "If you don't trust me, if you think so little of me, then maybe you should just divorce me." David felt like the air had been knocked out of his lungs. Divorce? Was that where they were now? Maria looked at him with an almost challenging glare. She wanted him to back down, to drop his suspicions. But David wasn't sure he could. Something was happening, something dark, and for the first time in their marriage, he feared that the woman he had sacrificed everything for was no longer the same person he had once loved. And the worst part, he had no proof. Not yet. Maria's affair with Tony had evolved quickly. What had started as casual flirtation at an elite social event in Johannesburg had turned into something intoxicating. Tony was everything David wasn't: flashy, extravagant, and unapologetically wealthy. He showered Maria with gifts, whispered promises of a luxurious life, and made her feel desired in ways she hadn't felt in years. But there was one problem. David, "You know this can't go on forever, Maria," Tony had told her one night as they lay in a penthouse suite overlooking the city. He traced a finger down her arm, his expression serious. "You're still married." Maria exhaled, resting her head on his chest. "I know," she murmured. "Then leave him," Tony said simply. "Divorce him, move in with me. I can give you everything he never could." Maria hesitated. She wanted to be with Tony, but a divorce would be messy. It would take time, involve legal battles, and worst of all, David would fight for Angela. She couldn't risk losing her daughter, not after working so hard to create this new life for herself. "I will," she finally promised. "Just give me some time." But as the days passed, Maria realized something. Tony was impatient, but he was not willing to get involved. He didn't care enough to help her manipulate the situation. He wanted her, but he didn't want trouble. So, Maria devised her own plan. One night, after another heated argument with David about her late nights and unexplained luxuries, Maria saw her opportunity. She needed to be free of him, and she needed it now. But rather than file for divorce, she took a darker route, one that would ensure he would never come back into her life. She sat Angela down, her voice trembling as she spoke. "Sweetheart, you know Daddy has been acting strange, right?" Angela frowned, shifting in her seat. "What do you mean?" Maria sighed dramatically, placing a gentle hand on Angela's. "I need you to tell the truth about something. If you do this, we'll finally be happy." The young girl looked confused, but nodded hesitantly. Maria's grip tightened. "If anyone asks, you have to say that Daddy hurt you, that he did things to you." Angela's face twisted in horror. "Mom, no. Daddy would never." Maria's voice sharpened, her grip like a vice. "You don't understand. This is the only way for us to be safe. If we don't do this, we'll never be happy." Angela's lips trembled. She was only 12. She loved her father, but she loved her mother too. And when Maria started crying, whispering how this was their only chance for a better life, Angela felt trapped. The next day, Maria went to the police. The case gained instant attention. A devoted father, accused of the most heinous crime against his own child. The courts wasted no time. Despite David's desperate pleas of innocence, the combination of Maria's tearful testimony and Angela's coerced confirmation sealed his fate. The judge's gavel echoed like a death sentence. David was imprisoned. In his cold, cramped cell, David replayed every moment, every decision he had made. He had sacrificed his dream job, his ambitions for her, and this was his reward. Meanwhile, Maria wasted no time moving on. She told Tony that David had been an abusive husband, that she had spent years suffering in silence. "I never wanted to talk about it," she sniffed, curling up in Tony's embrace. "But now that he's gone, I feel free." Tony, ever the self-indulgent man, didn't question it. He didn't care why David was gone. He cared that Maria was his now. Maria and Angela moved into Tony's lavish home in Johannesburg. Maria had everything she ever wanted: designer clothes, exclusive parties, the luxury she had craved for years. She was the wife of a wealthy businessman now. But even in her opulence, Maria never quite felt safe. Angela barely spoke to her. The girl who once adored her now moved through the house like a ghost, her eyes hollow, her smile forced. Maria could see it, the guilt eating away at her daughter. And though Maria reassured herself that it would all fade in time, deep down, she knew the truth. Some ghosts never leave. And one day Angela would find her voice. Angela was no longer the happy, carefree child she used to be. At 12, she had been forced into a lie that changed her father's life forever. And now, at 20, she lived in luxury, but luxury had never felt so empty. Despite the extravagant house in Johannesburg, the designer clothes, and the expensive vacations, something inside her was broken. She felt it in the way she avoided mirrors, in the way she forced a smile at social events, and in the way she barely spoke to her mother. Maria acted as if everything was perfect, but Angela knew better. At school, things weren't much easier. She had told everyone Tony was her father. It was easier, that way less painful than explaining the truth. But one afternoon, during an argument with a friend, her carefully crafted lie began to unravel. "You act so high and mighty, just because your stepfather is rich," her friend snapped. Angela rolled her eyes. "What's your problem?" My problem is that you think you can pretend forever." The girl smirked. "Tell me, Angela, where is your real father?" Angela felt the blood drain from her face. "You already know that," she mumbled. "Oh, do I?" Her friend crossed her arms. "Or should I remind you that your real father is in prison? That he's locked away for molesting you?" The words hit like a thunderclap. Angela's stomach churned. She could barely breathe as the room seemed to close in around her. Her classmates had gone silent, their eyes darting between her and the girl who had just shattered her world. Tears burned at the edges of Angela's vision, but she refused to let them fall. Without another word, she turned and ran, leaving the school behind. That night, as she lay in bed, the words kept replaying in her mind. "Your father is in prison for molesting you." It wasn't just a lie anymore. It was a stigma. Angela couldn't take it. She had to do something. The path to redemption. Desperate for peace, she found herself wandering into a church in Soweto one Sunday afternoon. She had never been particularly religious, but the weight of her guilt was suffocating, and she needed anything to make it stop. The pastor spoke of truth, of redemption, of how no burden was too heavy to be lifted. "The truth shall set you free." Angela clenched her fists. But telling the truth meant undoing everything. It meant betraying her mother, exposing her own role in her father's suffering, and facing the judgment of the world. Could she do that? For days, she wrestled with the decision, until one night she confronted Maria in the living room. "I can't do this anymore," Angela whispered, her voice trembling. Maria, reclining on a plush velvet couch, barely looked up from her wineglass. "Do what?" Angela swallowed hard. "Pretend, lie, live like nothing happened." Maria's expression darkened. "Angela, we've been through this. There's no going back." "There is a way back," Angela insisted. "I can tell the truth." Maria's grip on her glass tightened. "You don't know what you're saying." "Yes, I do," Angela's voice cracked. "I've ruined my father's life. We ruined his life." She took a shaky breath. "And I'm going to fix it." Maria stood abruptly, her eyes blazing. "You will do no such thing." But Angela had already made up her mind. She left that night, seeking refuge with a church leader who helped her navigate the legal process. A few weeks later, she made a public confession at a church in Pretoria, revealing everything. The media erupted with the shocking revelation. The courts reopened David's case, and with Angela's testimony, along with inconsistencies in Maria's original accusations, the truth was finally brought to light. David was exonerated. The day he walked free, Angela stood outside the courthouse, her heart pounding. When he finally stepped out, their eyes met. Tears spilled down Angela's cheeks. "Dad, I'm so sorry." David stared at her for a long moment before pulling her into a tight embrace. "I forgive you," he whispered. And just like that, the weight she had carried for 8 years began to lift. Maria wasn't as fortunate. Convicted of perjury and conspiracy, she received a lengthy sentence. Tony, who had only ever cared for his own pleasure, abandoned her without hesitation. Angela and David returned to Durban, ready to rebuild their lives, this time on a foundation of truth. For the first time in years, Angela felt something she thought she had lost forever: peace. Title: Midwife Trafficking Exposed, Lola Ademola and Ini Ola Ini. Coca first met on the bustling campus of Lagos. University College of Medicine. Both young, ambitious, and full of dreams, they gravitated toward each other during the first grueling weeks of nursing school. Lola, with her steady hands and calm demeanor, had a natural talent for caregiving. Enid, on the other hand, was vivacious, quick-witted, and always the first to crack a joke when stress levels hit a boiling point. Their friendship blossomed quickly. Late-night study sessions turned into shared meals, heartfelt conversations about their dreams, and eventually a sisterhood that felt unbreakable. Lola dreamed of becoming a midwife, bringing life into the world and easing the pains of childbirth. Enid envisioned herself as a nurse leader, someone who could advocate for better conditions and inspire younger nurses to serve with integrity. Together, they imagined making a difference in Nigeria's healthcare system. But nursing school was no fairy tale. The pressure was unrelenting, and the cracks began to show in their final year. What started as minor disagreements grew into sharp arguments. Lola often accused Enid of being reckless and too carefree with her responsibilities. Enid, in turn, resented Lola's perceived self-righteousness and need to always be in control. The final straw came during their clinical rotation, when Lola reported Enid for what she deemed a serious error, leaving a patient's medication unsupervised. Though Enid vehemently denied any wrongdoing, the incident left a stain on her record. Feeling betrayed, Enid cut Lola out of her life entirely. Graduation came and went without reconciliation. Each went her separate way, carrying the weight of their unresolved anger. 10 years later, the chaotic rhythm of Lagos streets still pulsed, and life carried on as relentlessly as ever. Lola, now an accomplished midwife, worked at Heritage Medical Center, one of the city's top private hospitals. Known for her skill and compassion, she had become a pillar of strength for expectant mothers who trusted her implicitly. Enid, on the other hand, had weathered her fair share of storms. After years of bouncing between hospitals and battling workplace politics, she had finally landed at Heritage as a general nurse. Though the hospital's prestige was a source of pride, the shadow of her unresolved past lingered, a reminder of a friendship she had once treasured. Their reunion happened unexpectedly one humid afternoon in the hospital corridor. Lola was coming off a long shift when she spotted Enid at the nurse's station. Time had changed them both. Lola carried an air of quiet authority, her white coat pristine and her head held high. Enid's boisterous energy had softened into a more subdued confidence, though her sharp wit still shone through in her interactions with colleagues. For a moment, neither woman spoke. The years of silence loomed between them like a wall. Then Enid broke the ice with a tentative smile. Lola. Lola hesitated, then nodded. Enid, it's been a while. The conversation that followed was stilted and polite, but it was a beginning. Though neither mentioned their falling out, both were keenly aware of the scars it had left. Over the next few weeks, they exchanged pleasantries in passing, but kept their interactions brief and professional. The camaraderie they once shared seemed impossible to recover. Heritage Medical Center had a reputation for excellence, but rumors of corruption were never far behind. Over time, Enid began to notice strange patterns in the maternity ward. Babies who were delivered healthy and whole would sometimes disappear, only for the mothers to be told they had been stillborn or required emergency transfers. The explanations felt rehearsed, and the grief-stricken mothers rarely questioned them. It wasn't until she overheard to orderlies whispering about Madam's deals that Enid's suspicions crystallized. She began piecing together fragments of information. Vans arriving late at night, certain files going missing, and the odd behavior of some staff members. One name kept surfacing: Lola. Enid's stomach churned. Could it be true? The Lola she had known would never, But then again, they weren't the same people they had been in nursing school. The weight of the accusation bore down on her, but she knew she couldn't ignore it. If Lola was involved in something as heinous as baby trafficking, Enid had to act. Determined to uncover the truth, Enid began watching Lola closely. She noticed that Lola often worked late into the night, long after her shifts had ended. On more than one occasion, Enid saw her slipping into the administrative wing, where patient records were stored. It wasn't much, but it was enough to deepen her unease. One evening, Enid decided to follow her. She trailed Lola to a storage room near the maternity ward. Peeking through the cracked door, she saw Lola handing over what appeared to be a medical file to a man in a crisp suit. The man handed her an envelope, which she quickly tucked into her pocket. Ina's heart pounded. It was one thing to suspect, it was another to see it with her own eyes. But she needed proof. The next day, Enid confronted Lola in the staff lounge. "Lola, what's going on? I saw you last night." Lola's expression hardened. "I don't know what you think you saw, but you should mind your own business." "Don't do this," Enid pleaded. "If you're in trouble, let me help you. But if you're selling babies, Lola, I can't look the other way." The room was thick with tension. Lola's eyes flashed with a mix of anger and something else, fear. "You don't understand," she said finally. "You have no idea what I've been through." "Then help me understand," Enid said. "Because right now, all I see is someone I used to trust doing something unforgivable." Lola turned away, her shoulders slumping under the weight of the accusation. "Stay out of it, Enid, for your own sake." Unwilling to let it go, Enid began documenting everything she observed. She secretly recorded conversations, collected copies of suspicious documents, and even managed to take a blurry photo of the man Lola had met. With enough evidence in hand, she approached the hospital's administration, only to be met with resistance. "These are serious allegations," the director said, frowning. "But without concrete proof, we can't take action." Frustrated but undeterred, Enid took her findings to a journalist friend. Together, they uncovered a sprawling network of baby trafficking that extended far beyond Heritage Medical Center. The operation was worth millions, with key players in hospitals, adoption agencies, and even law enforcement. When the story broke, it sent shockwaves through Lagos. Lola was arrested, along with several other staff members. During her interrogation, she confessed to her involvement, but claimed she had been coerced by powerful figures who threatened her family. Months later, Enid visited Lola in prison. The woman who sat before her was a shadow of the friend she had once known. Tears streamed down Lola's face as she recounted how mounting debts and threats had pushed her into the scheme. She expressed remorse, but knew that nothing could undo the harm she had caused. "I don't expect forgiveness," Lola said, "but thank you for stopping me. I lost my way, and I'll have to live with that." Enid left the prison with a heavy heart. The friendship they had shared was gone, replaced by a bitter. "I don't expect forgiveness," Lola said, "but thank you for stopping me." Enid left the prison with a heavy heart. The friendship they had shared was gone, replaced by a bittersweet mix of regret and closure. But as she walked out into the bustling streets of Lagos, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She couldn't save Lola, but she could continue fighting for justice and ensuring that no other mother endured such pain. Heritage Medical Center underwent sweeping reforms in the wake of the scandal, and Enid played a key role in advocating for greater transparency and accountability. Though the scars of the past remained, she found solace in her work and in the knowledge that she had done the right thing. As for Lola, her story became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the corruption that can fester in even the most trusted institutions. In the end, Their paths had diverged, but their shared history served as a testament to the power of truth and the cost of silence. Title: The People's Champion. On the outskirts of Amman, a small rural community tucked between rolling hills and dense forest, lived Obi, a man of humble beginnings. With his weathered hands and clothes patched so many times they looked like a quilt, he spent his days farming the meager plot of land he inherited from his father. The soil was tired, yielding little more than cassava and maize, and Obina barely made enough to feed his family. Yet, he was known throughout the village for his integrity and boundless optimism. Obi's story wasn't just one of poverty, but of resilience. His father, a widowed blacksmith, had died when Obi was only 12, leaving him to care for his 2 younger siblings, while other children played in the fields. Obi worked tirelessly to provide for the family. Over time, his hard work earned him respect, but it also became a barrier. Obi's head is always buried in work, people would say. Though respected, he remained on the fringes of village life, often too burdened by responsibilities to join community festivities. But this distance also gave him perspective. He observed the villagers' struggles with a clarity others, distracted by their daily lives, often missed. He saw the cracks in the foundations of their community, and though he didn't say it aloud, he dreamed of a day when those cracks could be repaired. Every market day, Obi would lend a hand to neighbors struggling to load their wares, or he'd share his produce with families who had even less than he did. When disputes arose, he was often the mediator, his even-tempered nature diffusing tensions. Over time, people began to look to him not only as a neighbor, but as a moral compass. Amanso had long been neglected by the government. The roads were so riddled with potholes that cars rarely ventured in. The lone health center had no doctor and often ran out of medicine. Children learned under roofs with gaping holes that let in the rain, and the community's farmers were left to toil with outdated tools and no support. The village's youth, tired of the endless cycle of poverty, often left for the city, never to return. Those who stayed were resigned to their fate, their dreams buried under the weight of reality. The residents had grown weary of politicians, who only appeared during elections to make empty promises and disappear afterward. Many villagers had given up hope that their lives would ever change. But as the situation worsened, the spark of resistance began to flicker anew. One evening, a group of elders and community leaders gathered under the ancient baobab tree in the village square. "We cannot sit and watch this neglect continue," Chief Agoro, the head elder, declared. "We need one of our own to represent us in the government, someone who understands our struggles." "But who?" a woman asked. "All the educated ones leave for the city and never return." It was Nika, the village midwife, who finally suggested Obi. "He has no riches, no connections, but his heart is pure," she said. "If we pool our resources, we can sponsor him to run for office." The idea took root. The villagers, despite their poverty, began contributing whatever they could. Some gave money, others donated food to sustain Obi during the campaign. When the proposal was presented to him, Obi was reluctant at first. "Me? A politician?" He laughed nervously. "I'm just a farmer. What do I know about governance?" "You know what's right," Nika said firmly, "and that's more than we can say for those in power." After weeks of persuasion, Obi finally agreed, though his wife Jennifer was less enthused. "What kind of madness is this?" she fumed. "We're already struggling, and now you want to go chasing dreams?" "It's not about me, Jennifer," Obi replied. "It's about the community. If we don't stand up for ourselves, who will?" She muttered under her breath, but relented, though her skepticism lingered. In truth, Gen 8's discontent stemmed from years of hardship. She had once been a spirited young woman with dreams of her own, but the weight of poverty had worn her down. While Obi found purpose in helping others, Jennifer saw it as another burden. Chapter 2: A Rising Star. Obi's campaign was unlike anything the region had ever seen. While other candidates threw lavish rallies and distributed bribes, Obi walked from village to village, meeting people in their homes and marketplaces. He listened to their concerns, their stories of hardship, and their dreams for a better future. "I have nothing to give you but my word," he told them. "If you trust me, I will fight for you." His sincerity resonated with the people. When election day arrived, Obi won by a landslide, shocking the political establishment. His victory was hailed as a triumph of the common man, but it also earned him powerful enemies. Many seasoned politicians viewed him as an outsider who had no business in their world. Behind closed doors, whispers of sabotage and conspiracy began to circulate. Obi wasted no time getting to work. True to his promises, he began by lobbying for a new hospital in Amansou. After months of relentless advocacy, funding was approved and construction began. Next, he secured grants to renovate the schools and repair the roads. With the help of agricultural experts, he introduced mechanized farming techniques, transforming the community's fortunes. Farmers began to see bountiful harvests, and families that once struggled to eat could now sell surplus produce. As his achievements mounted, Obi's popularity soared. He became a beacon of hope, not just in Amansou, but across the region. Yet, with success came challenges. His fellow politicians, envious of his grassroots support and unwavering principles, began plotting against him. They spread rumors, attempted to sabotage his projects, and even tried to bribe him into abandoning his reformist agenda. But Obi remained steadfast. "I'm not here for wealth or power," he told his detractors. "I'm here for my people." Chapter 3: Humble Beginnings. Before the weight of politics and the gaze of an entire community fell upon him, Obina's life was defined by simpler struggles and enduring love. He met Jennifer on a sunlit morning at the village well, where the young woman stood balancing a clay pot on her hip. She was new to Amansou, having moved there with her widowed mother. The moment he saw her, Obi was struck by her confidence, her easy laughter, and the way she treated even the youngest children with warmth. Obi, shy by nature, spent weeks finding excuses to visit the well at the same time she did. Eventually, his efforts paid off. One morning, as Jennifer struggled to lift her pot, he stepped in to help. "Allow me," he said, his voice trembling slightly. She smiled. "Thank you, kind stranger. What's your name?" From that moment, their bond grew. They talked about everything: her dreams of becoming a seamstress, his dedication to his farm, and their shared hope of building something lasting in Amansou. They were drawn to each other by a shared resilience, both having lost parents young and understanding the fragility of life. They married in a modest ceremony attended by the entire village. Their first years together were difficult, but filled with quiet joys. They worked side by side in the fields, planting maize and cassava. Evenings were spent under the stars, sharing stories and dreams. Despite their poverty, they found contentment in their companionship and in the simple beauty of their surroundings. When Jennifer's first sewing machine arrived, bought with savings, scraped together over 2 years, she wept with joy. "We're building something, Obi," she said. "Slowly, but we're building." In those early years, they were comfortable in their modest life. Obi's work in the fields and Jennifer's sewing brought in just enough to sustain them. They didn't envy those with wealth. They focused instead on what they had growing: love, and a deep connection to their community. But as the years passed and their family grew, the strain of survival began to wear on Jennifer. The love that once buoyed her through hardship now felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the weight of unfulfilled dreams. For Obi, however, those humbling beginnings were a constant reminder of what truly mattered. He never lost sight of the joy they once found in simplicity. Even as Jennifer struggled to reconcile their past, contentment with their present challenges. Chapter 4: Trouble at Home. While Obi's public life thrived, his home life was unraveling. Jennifer, who had grudgingly supported his campaign, grew increasingly resentful. She saw other politicians living in mansions, driving luxury cars, and traveling abroad with their families, while she and Obi remained in their modest house. "How long will we live like this?" she demanded one evening, slamming a plate of food on the table. "You're a politician now. We should be enjoying life, not scraping by like peasants." "Ada, you know why I'm doing this," Obi said calmly. "The money meant for mansions and cars is building hospitals and schools. Isn't that worth more?" "Maybe to you," she snapped. "But what about your family? Don't we deserve better?" Her words stung, but Obi held his tongue. He understood her frustration, but he couldn't abandon his principles. Still, the arguments became more frequent, and Jennifer's bitterness began to affect their children, who were caught in the crossfire. Chapter 5: The Turning Point. One day, while visiting a newly renovated school, Obi received an urgent call. A group of corrupt politicians had conspired to frame him for embezzlement. The allegations were baseless, but the scandal threatened to overshadow all his accomplishments. As protests erupted, Obi's enemies demanded his resignation. Jennifer, instead of offering support, saw it as an opportunity. "Maybe this is your chance to step down and live like the others," she said. Obi stared at her, heartbroken. "Is that what you think of me? I think you're a fool for sacrificing so much for people who will never appreciate it," she replied coldly. Despite the odds, Obi fought to clear his name, with the help of evidence provided by loyal colleagues and testimonies from grateful residents. The truth came to light. Not only was he exonerated, but the scandal also exposed the corruption of his detractors, leading to their downfall. Chapter 6: A Mixed Ending. Obi's vindication was celebrated throughout Amansa. The hospital was completed. The roads were smooth and safe, and the community flourished. Yet, the strain on his marriage remained. Jennifer, though proud of his achievements, couldn't reconcile her desire for personal comfort with his commitment to public service. One evening, as they sat in their small living room, Obi spoke softly. "Jenny, I love you and the children more than anything, but I can't turn my back on what we've built. If you can't accept that, then perhaps we need to rethink our future together." Tears filled her eyes, but she said nothing. For the first time, she saw the weight he carried, the sacrifices he made not just for the community, but for his family. Yet, her silence spoke volumes about the growing chasm between them. In the months that followed, Obi continued his work. Though his home became a place of quiet tension, he found solace in the gratitude of his people and the tangible progress around him. Jennifer, while still distant, began to see glimpses of the man she fell in love with. A man driven by a vision larger than himself. The story of Obi remains a testament to the power of integrity and the cost of leadership. In Amanso, he is hailed as a hero, though his personal life serves as a poignant reminder that even the noblest paths come with their share of thorns. Title: From Soil to Sky.
In the quiet village of Igbaraoke, nestled in the heart of Ondo State, Nigeria, there lived a young farmer named Adisa. Adisa was not a man of letters. His family could not afford to send him to school, and so he grew up learning to till the soil, plant seeds, and harvest crops under the blazing African sun. Despite his lack of education, Adisa was known far and wide for his hardworking nature, humility, and generosity. Adisa was also known for his fierce work ethics. He worked tirelessly on his farm, cultivating yams, cassava, and cocoa, and whatever he earned from his harvest, he shared generously with those in need. His kindness knew no bounds, and his laughter was infectious. Adisa had a knack for making people smile, even on their darkest days. It was said that no one ever left his presence without feeling lighter. One fateful day, the community held a cultural festival in Akure, the state capital. Adisa, curious about the city life he had only heard stories about, decided to attend. It was at the festival that he first laid eyes on Morayo. She was everything Adisa was not: highly educated, polished, and the daughter of a prominent professor. Morayo had just earned her PhD in sociology and was well respected in academic and social circles. Though to many, the two were worlds apart, but to Adisa, there was something about Morayo that felt familiar. He approached her with his characteristic humility and a touch of humor that caught her off guard. "Ah, fine, madam," he said, scratching the back of his head. "If I were a professor like you, I would be teaching the sun how to shine brighter because you have dimmed its light." Morayo burst into laughter. She was charmed by his simplicity and the warmth in his eyes. Intrigued by his humor, she struck up a conversation with him. Adisa's sincerity and humility shone through. Despite their vastly different worlds, they connected immediately. Life was very different for Dr. Morayo Adebayo. Born into affluence, she was the daughter of a renowned professor and a high-ranking civil servant. Morayo was admired for her intellect, beauty, and poise. Morayo was in a serious relationship with Tade, the son of a wealthy oil magnate. Tade was everything her family had hoped for: educated, well dressed, and rich. He showered her with expensive gifts, took her to luxurious places, and often boasted about the future he could offer her. Yet something felt off. Tade's world revolved around material wealth, and his arrogance often overshadowed his charm. Morayo began to notice his condescension towards people he considered beneath him. On one occasion, during a charity event, Tade had sneered at a young boy selling oranges. "Some people are just born to be poor," he had said casually. Morayo, who had always believed in the dignity of all people, found herself questioning her relationship with Tade. Though he provided everything she could want materially, she realized she felt increasingly empty emotionally. However, after their first meeting, Morayo found herself thinking about Adisa more often. She began to notice how alive and light-hearted she felt in his presence. Meanwhile, her relationship with Tade grew more strained. Tade's obsession with wealth and status began to suffocate her. He dismissed her concerns, believing his money could keep her satisfied. One day, during a dinner at a high-end restaurant, Tade made a remark that became the final straw. A waiter had accidentally spilled a glass of water on him, and instead of handling it gracefully, Tade erupted in anger, belittling the young man in front of everyone. "This is why some people don't deserve to be anything more than servants," he spat. Morayo was horrified. She realized she couldn't spend her life with someone who had no respect for others. No matter how wealthy he was, That night, she ended her relationship with Tade, shocking her family and friends. I don't want a man who looks down on others, she told her mother. I want someone who values people, no matter their status or background. As fate would have it, Mariah and Adisa crossed paths again at another community event. This time, she initiated the conversation. She was drawn to his authenticity and the way he made everyone around him feel seen and valued. Adisa, though flattered by her attention, was initially hesitant. Madam, I'm just a simple farmer, he said. I don't have the kind of life you are used to. Mariah smiled. And yet, you have one thing money can't buy, and that's a kind heart. They shared contacts, and over time, the two began to talk. And Mariah discovered the depth of Adisa's character, and their friendship blossomed into a courtship that defied societal expectations. Mariah's friends were baffled, and her family tried to dissuade her. You are a PhD holder from a wealthy family, and he is a poor, uneducated farmer, her father argued. What will people say? But Mariah stood firm. What people say doesn't matter. What matters is the kind of person he is, she said. Adisa, inspired by Mariah's belief in him, began to see himself in a new light. Though he had never considered formal education, he decided to take the leap. With Mariah's encouragement, he enrolled in adult literacy classes and began learning to read and write. They eventually got married in a grand ceremony, and their wedding was the talk of the region. People from all walks of life, village farmers, and city elites gathered to celebrate their union. Adisa, dressed in a well-tailored agbada, stood proudly beside Morayo, who looked radiant in her traditional attire. With Morayo's support, Adisa continued his education. He eventually completed his secondary school education and even attended a university in Ondo State, where he studied agricultural science. Education transformed him, but it did not change his heart. Adisa and Morayo's love story became the foundation for something even greater. After completing his studies, Adisa returned to Igbaraoke with a dream to ensure that no child in the village would face the same struggles he had. Using his combined resources, they built a school, Ireti Ayo Community School, which provided free education to all children in the community. Adisa hired qualified teachers and personally paid their salaries. The school also offered adult literacy programs, ensuring that farmers and artisans could gain basic education. Adisa and Morayo's effort transformed the village. Children who had once walked miles to attend a rundown school now had access to quality education. The ripple effect of their work spread beyond Igbaraoke, inspiring neighboring communities to invest in education. Years later, Adisa stood in front of a crowd during the school's anniversary celebration. With Morayo by his side, he addressed the students, many of whom were the children of the farmers he had grown up with. My story began in the soil, he said, his voice filled with emotion, but with hard work, education, and the love of a good woman. I have learned that our roots do not determine how high we can grow. Education is the seed, and with it, we can all reach for the skies. Mariah smiled as she watched him speak. She had once been courted by a man with riches, but in Adisa, she had found a wealth far greater, a man with a heart big enough to change the world around him. Mariah often joked that she had married a man with a PhD in humanity. Their love story became a legend in Ondo State. a testament to the power of kindness, perseverance, and the belief that true wealth lies in lifting others.